Okay, so if staff's ready, I'll go ahead and call us to order. Staff, you ready?
Yep, we're ready.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of Vallecitos Water District on Wednesday, March 17th, 2021 at 5 p.m. Via teleconference. Glenn, if you can go ahead and put up the notice to the public, and I'll read it. Due to the evolving situation with the COVID-19 novel coronavirus, so long as state or local public officials have imposed or recommended social distancing measures, Vallecitos Water District will hold future meetings via teleconferencing and allow members of the public to observe and address the meeting telephonically or otherwise electronically. During this period of time, Vallecitos Water District will not be making any physical location available for members of the public to observe the meeting and offer public comment. The public is encouraged to watch and participate in the meeting from the safety of their homes. The meeting can be viewed on the agenda page located on the main page of the district's website. The public comments or questions can be submitted to the following email address: publiccomment@vwd.org. All written comments that are received at least 90 minutes before the meeting will be provided to the board, and a record of the receipt of comment will be noted during the meeting. Members of the public viewing the meeting via Zoom video conferencing platform can express their desire to provide input at the appropriate time by utilizing the raised hand function. Additional instructions for online participation will be posted on the district's website at www.vwd.org/meetings. Okay, we'll go ahead and call us all to order. Director Hernandez.
Yes, sir. Pledge. This is awkward. We're supposed to stand for the pledge. I will be standing, but until we get the flag, you can do as you wish. I don't think it would be an insult to our country. So.
Okay, thank you for leading us in the pledge.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance, to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all. Thank you, Director Hernandez.
Thank you, President Sinella.
And we'll go ahead and do a roll call for attendance. Director Boyd Hodgson.
Present.
Director Elithart.
Here.
Director Pinnock.
Here.
Director Hernandez.
Here.
And I am here as well. So we got everybody together. Let's see where we're at now. I would like to entertain a motion to adopt the agenda for the regular meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to adopt the agenda for tonight by Director Boyd Hodgson and a second by Director Elithart. Do a roll call vote. Director Pinnock.
Yes.
Director Elithart.
Yes.
Director Hernandez.
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, this is the time for public comment. Persons wishing to address the matter not on the agenda may be heard at this time. However, no action will be taken until the matter is placed on a future agenda in accordance with board policy. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. We're not going to do a request for speaker slip, but if you raise your hand either now for public comments or during one of the items, we'll certainly recognize you. I do want to acknowledge that we have received 3 written letters, one from Gail Martin, one from Port Brewing, and then the third one was referring the Port Brewing matter, but I'm not sure if it was actually from them. Glenn, can you clarify that?
You're on mute.
I apologize. Thank you for that. So we received a letter from co-signed by Patrice Thompson and Dennis Walsh, and it's related to the same topic that's addressed by Mr. Tommy Arthur.
Okay.
And Mr. Arthur's was very, very long to read in public comment area. So President Sinella, I'll look to you for guidance.
Yeah, given that we have 3 letters and it's never been the practice of the board to read the letters that have been submitted. Everybody has the opportunity to submit something to the board in writing, The board has received all 3 letters. The last one being relatively and with short notice. I think it came in maybe an hour and a half before the meeting. At least that's when I received it. Everybody in the public has an opportunity to join our meetings and to voice their opinions or comment on anything that we're discussing or anything that they would like to share with us. It's probably easier today than ever before, given that we're video conferencing. And I think this, I've always been kind of uncomfortable with this practice of having staff read aloud the letters that we receive. I just think that nobody really should be speaking the words of somebody else, especially in a formal setting like this. And so if anybody would like to speak during the public discussion, the floor is wide open. Just raise your hand and we'll go ahead and recognize you. And again, if anything comes up as we go through this meeting where you would like to address the board, we would bend over backwards to give you an opportunity to do that. So, but I just think that this practice that we started at the beginning of COVID of reading the written correspondence, I think we were trying to be as flexible during the beginning days of COVID as we possibly could with this new format of having video conference meetings. But now that we've been doing this for a little over a year, I think everybody's used to this new format, and that having staff read the words of other people, it just really isn't that appropriate.
Mr.
And
President.
with that, yep,
Mr.
question.
President,
Yes.
I would like to register my objection to that for the minutes.
Okay.
And if I have a moment, I'd just like to raise a couple of issues with that.
Sure.
I hear you, and I agree. I think it's much more effective when the public comes to our meetings and speaks from their heart and raises things to our attention. However, we have set a precedent, and we do get very lengthy emails, and I do hear your perspective on that. I think that if we are going to eliminate or go against what we have done in precedent, I think that we need to have done that in advance rather than making a decision based on a letter that we got today. And so I think that going forward, if we would like to say, maybe we don't accept written public comments that are meant to be read, then we need to update that in the notice to the public. We also perhaps need to make a policy about that. Secondly, we do meet at 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock is tough for some people because they work or because they're preparing dinner or things like that. So I just would like to offer a different perspective, and I would like to register my objection. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate that. Any other comments or feedback? Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead. Do we have any speakers raising their hand at this time, Glenn?
I do not see anybody raising their hands electronically.
Okay,
Oh,
great.
I take that back. 2 hands just went up.
Awesome. Let's go ahead and I can't see them, Glenn. So if you would like to recognize them.
Yeah, so we have Mr. Dennis Walsh and Miss Gail Martin. At the top of my list is Dennis Walsh, so I'm going to go ahead and click on Mr. Walsh. For some reason, I'm not able to allow him to speak.
I'll allow him.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Walsh.
Hi, yeah, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to our issues today. And we've had the pleasure of meeting some of you folks and hosting you, bringing over to our facility. We actually share a building with Port Abbey, Port Brewing and Lost Abbey. Tommy wrote a letter. He shared that with us today, and we added a couple of paragraphs to the letter. I would be happy to read those letters if you wanted me to. And I'm also on the board of directors with San Marcos Chamber of Commerce, and it's been a pleasure working with you guys. And I know you guys get a lot of challenges, do a lot of stuff, but once again, I could be happy to read the letter from Help Breads Incorporated Oasis if you want me to do that. That's all I want to say.
Hey, Glenn, if I can just chime in for a second, and thank you for saying that, Mr. Walsh. And I believe I had an opportunity to meet with you on this matter a while back. And I actually, when I read your letter, so if you want to read it, you're more than welcome to, but I think that, the board did receive it. I was actually going to propose to staff that they bring this back as an agendized item so we can have a full discussion on it. It's a very complex matter, as you indicated in your letter, and as you're well aware. I think at least myself, and when I know I can speak for Director Elithar because he was there, we're very understanding and empathetic about the situation, and we want to. I think our goal is to help you find some resolution that will work for you, but I don't think we can actually talk about it at great length at this meeting. It's not agendized. So I was going to ask that Glenn, that you do agendize it next meeting or the meeting after, and then that way we can have an entire discussion around the entire matter.
But
Certainly, but Mr. Walsh, if you'd like to read your letter, you're more than welcome to.
No, that sounds even better, and I appreciate that. I just I didn't want to present it and then do it half-heartedly, but this will be much better if you guys get time to digest it, and it can be a discussion later. And I would imagine that we'll be allowed to participate in that discussion, and that sounds perfect. And I really like the Pledge of Allegiance after a 24-year veteran. I thought that was a very cool way to kick off the meeting, so appreciate that.
Great. Well, thank you.
And so I won't read it tonight, and I look forward to attending the meeting in the future when this will be an agenda item.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And President Sinella, before we go to Ms. Martin, I would add that fortunately we have 3 weeks between this meeting and our next meeting on April 7th, I think it is. So I think we'll be able to put together an item for the board to at least initiate the discussion on this topic, because it is very complex.
Mhm.
Okay,
Thank you.
Patrick, if you can allow Ms. Martin to speak. Patrick, you still with us?
Yes, she's good.
All right, go ahead, Miss Martin.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, 3 things. It would be nice to know what the general topic is of the letter from Patrice and Dennis.
Would you like me to respond to that, President Sinella?
Sure.
Yeah, so the general topic is the capacity that a particular business is entitled to. So in general, with these 2 businesses, there's a question of whether they're utilizing the system more than the capacity fees that they've paid into. And there's a whole history, and it's much deeper than that. But in general, that's what the topic is about.
Okay, thank you very much for letting me know the general topic. That sounds very complex, but also very important.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I am concerned that you are not reading the letters, because we are asked whether or not we want to say them during the meeting, or we're asked whether or not we want them to have them read. And I find that having them read, you have a very clear voice, you enunciate, you pay attention to punctuation and emphasis, and that way every single word is on the record. Whereas when a person is speaking, sometimes the microphone wavers in and out, the sound might have a glitch, and words are lost, and it is therefore not totally correct as to what is put into the record. But I will take this advantage today, since you are looking at what kind of a policy you want to have regarding our public comments. I have 2 items. Number 1, I wanted to know what date did the board accept our 2020 CAFR? And I also wanted to ask about how the board is going to think about my proposal regarding the $1.6 million settlement refund, if the board is going to consider issuing an immediate one-time credit to the ratepayers, since everyone is suffering so badly from the COVID economic impact.
Point of order, Mr. President.
No, I understand, Director Hernandez. We will have a full discussion regarding the latter item Ms. Martin, when we get to that item, so it wouldn't be appropriate to talk about it now. And then, Glenn, if you can just maybe answer the quick question of when the CAFR will be posted online.
So the board adopted or approved the CAFR back on November 18th of last year, and it's online now.
Okay.
Miss Martin brought it to our attention. For some reason, I thought it was on there before, and when she looked for it, it wasn't there. She's right. We added it, so it's online, and we provided her with a copy as well.
Great.
I would like to know that, hello, can you still hear me?
Yes,
We
ma'am.
can.
Yes, I know that there was, the CAFR was presented. What I was asking was, what date did the board accept the CAFR?
Yeah, I believe that was on November 18th
Oh, okay, November 18th
of 2020.
of 2020?
Yes.
Okay, and I do appreciate that you're going to have a discussion in a little while on the merits of how to address this settlement. I just want you to urge you to think strongly about how the impact of an immediate credit is more significant than allowing the $1.6 million to be diluted into the entire general budget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, Glenn?
No, it was just those two.
Okay. Then I'll entertain a motion to approve tonight's consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar will be voted upon by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or member of the public requests that a particular item or items be removed from the consent calendar, in which case it'll be considered separately under action items.
Move to approve. Hernandez.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Director Hernandez to approve tonight's consent calendar. We have a second by Director Boyd Hodgson, and we'll do a roll call vote. Director Elthart,
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Director Pennick,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. We catch up here on my agenda. That takes us into action items with item 2.1, design engineering professional services agreement. Glenn, is that going to be you or is that going to be James or?
It's actually going to be Ryan Morgan, but this is basically the board's consideration of awarding an agreement to initiate design activities on a critical piece of infrastructure. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ryan.
Okay, thank you, General Manager Prum. Good evening, President Sanella and directors of the board. It's my pleasure to bring to you tonight the Design Engineering Task Order Agreement Award for the 16-inch emergency bypass pipeline rehabilitation project. The 16-inch bypass sewer pipeline was originally installed in 1969. It's identified on the map on your screen as the orange-brown colored line. It spans 4,000 feet between Rancho Santa Fe and Melrose Drive. It consists of techite pipe or reinforced plastic mortar, popular of the generation of this time period. Very also popular with brakes, history of brakes due to certain characteristics of its structural composition. The bypass pipeline is considered a pressure pipeline with segments of low pressure, but also some segments of gravity flow or no pressure or very low pressure. It has a downstream connection with the land outfall relief sewer siphon A. Siphon A. It really serves as a relief sewer between the district's lift station 1 conveyance of influent raw sewage to Meadowlark Reclamation Facility. So during certain emergency situations or high flows, the influent can be diverted through the bypass to go right into the district's land outfall. Because of that, certain flow characteristics are also dictated by the downstream land outfall under these certain peak flow conditions. This is considered a critical infrastructure asset to the district due to primarily this reason. And it's been treated as a non-operable asset due to its brake risk and regulatory actions from those potential brakes. The history of failures over the past 5 years is identified in the board packet on page 68. Specifically, 4 failures have occurred over the past 5 years. 2 brakes were highlighted in particular on January 2018, just north of Brighton Glen Road. A brake occurred which was deemed to be a non-emergency situation, which could be properly budgeted for and executed through design and construction. In that process of taking it to construction, a second brake about a year later on February 2019 occurred during a storm event. That was deemed an emergency situation, and it was repaired essentially under the same contract as the first. All repairs have been completed on the bypass to date, but again, it is treated as non-operable. This project is considered an operational priority in the 2020 and 21 budget CIP planning. Staff recently completed a project feasibility study, which included an alternatives analysis, survey mapping, environmental engineering, and CEQA reporting services. A potential opportunity for savings identified itself in the feasibility study, which included adopting the 12-inch fail-safe pipeline, a ductile iron pipeline, into the scope of work for this project. The pipeline, the fail-safe pipeline, is identified as the green line on the graphic on your screen. And this pipeline was installed a little bit later in the 1980s. Again, it's 12-inch ductile iron pipe. It conveys secondary effluent, treated flow. It could also convey tertiary treated flow from Meadow Lark to the Encina Ocean outfall. It is located in this corridor parallel to the bypass by about 5 feet offset. And it's constructible in many reasons to adopt this into the scope of work. It would share a lot of the same construction costs, mobilization, survey, excavation, even contractor overhead and markup could be shared by essentially the rehabilitation of both pipelines, which are actually both considered district assets, emergency infrastructure assets. The separate downstream segment of the 12-inch failsafe is also in design currently. The board adopted this Buena section, Buena reach of the failsafe on October 21st, 2020. Photos on page 70 of the board packet identify some of the removal ductile iron pipeline corrosion and kind of looks like Swiss cheese with holes in the pipe wall. Some of this was identified as external corrosion factors from soil. But with ductile iron pipeline, if certain segments are dewatered for a certain amount of time, it could also create corrosion potential from inside the pipeline as well. Feasibility study by staff was finalized in January of 2021, just recently, and it was used as the basis of design for developing the RFP for design services, engineering services for final design of this project. The RFP was submitted to 3 district as-needed civil engineering consultants on February 15th. Linear infrastructure, rehab design expertise, specifically special considerations on the project approach were requested. Staff received proposals from IEC and NV5 on March 3rd. Staff reviewed the proposals for responsiveness to the RFP, including approach, scope, and schedule. Staff followed up with IEC on March 8th. We just requested some clarifications and refinement of the scope of work. IEC was ultimately selected as the most responsive and qualified consultant with a total fee of $149,370. This includes design and bid phase services. Staff presented the item to the Engineering and Equipment Committee as an informational item on March 8th. The fiscal impact is broken down on page 71 of your board packet. The project total budget is just over $2 million. The survey mapping and environmental
Excuse me, Ryan, I'm sorry to
engineering-
interrupt. Can we
Yes.
can we go to that budget breakdown on the share screen, please?
Oh, yes. General Manager Prone, do you want to put that up, or should I?
Ryan, I could share it. I have it up. If
Yeah, go
you
ahead.
if you stop sharing, I could probably share it right now.
Yep, I'll stop sharing. 1 second.
Okay. Can everybody see the fiscal impact page on page 71?
Yes.
I can see it.
Okay, go ahead, Ryan.
The total budget is just over $2 million for the project. And as mentioned, the preliminary design included survey mapping, which included topo survey, aerial survey, orthophoto, laid the groundwork for the design, and environmental engineering services, which has potential to be critical path for the project due to the CEQA timelines associated with it. IEC Design Engineering Services identified as $149,370. Pre-design staff services at $60,000, and then really the rest of these are allocated dollar values that's in the fiscal impact. They have not been spent, but they're included right now, which brings us to a grand total of just over $730,000. With the addition of the fail-safe portion, staff will update the project budget through the CIP budgeting process, which currently we're ongoing right now. An engineer's estimate of probable construction costs will be provided, fine-tuned, working with IEC throughout this budgeting process as well. So that total right there does not represent the end total. We will review and revise the end total concurrently with this budget cycle. With that, staff recommends, with support from the Engineering and Equipment Committee, recommends to the Board of Directors, authorize the General Manager to enter into a task order authorization under the as-needed professional services agreement with IEC in the amount of $149,370 for project design and bid phase engineering services. And with that, I will take any questions there may be.
All right. Thank you, Ryan. Do any of my colleagues have any questions at this time?
Yes, Director or President.
Director Hernandez.
The budget is little over 2 million. What we have in front of us is 730 round numbers. What's else do we anticipate falling in to the project?
Primarily the construction contract.
Okay.
With the prime contractor.
And with that addition, do we anticipate having our staff do construction management of the project?
We will provide inspection services for the contract. We will determine whether or not we recommend to also bring on a consultant construction manager who could more closely observe this work on a daily basis. This project is going to be...
I'm referring to, in addition to those two, our own, mostly on every project, we have staff doing construction management. And
those services are shown for construction staff services at $50,000 in the fiscal breakdown. That includes those inspectors who will be out there checking in with this project.
And Director Hernandez, as you may recall, we'll take a look at our availability because our inspectors are first and foremost allocated to the development jobs because we get 100% reimbursed on those jobs. And then if there's an opening or availability based on the workload, we use them on capital jobs.
Yeah, I understand that, and that makes perfect sense. What I have seen in other projects is then we get a more than 10, 20% for Vallecitos engineering department management of a project. And I don't see it here. I didn't hear anybody say that, but if we get anything that above and beyond, I hope they bring that to the board for our approval.
Any contract that we do over $50,000 must come to the board, and we'll be going to the board if we go out for construction management or inspection, because it'd be well above 50,000 if we go outside for this.
All right, that's close enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hernandez. Director Boyd Hodgson.
Thank you. This is the direction that I thought Director Hernandez was going with his question, but mine's slightly different. So we do have a construction contract TBD. So there's a gap there that we're not accounting for, which explains why the budget is 2 million and we're only at $730,000. I guess what I'm asking for is kind of a reasonable assurance that the construction contract will fill that gap and not go much beyond the $2 million budget. Can someone please address that?
Yeah, I could probably start, and Ryan, why don't you chime in if I'm getting any of this wrong. So Director, basically the $2 million is to do the single pipe, but when we did the analysis and we know the fail-safe is already a critical infrastructure that needs replacement or rehabilitation, we're taking this opportunity to do both pipes and kind of get an economy of scale. We don't expect the $2 million to hold the budget of both pipes, and we're working with our design engineer to get a new estimate, which we're going to roll into the budget. During the budget process, we're going to bring that new estimate and the change in the project cost to the finance committee and then ultimately to the board. So this way, both the finance committee and the board will see the difference and the justification, which right now we're still gathering data. We haven't got the engineer on board yet, and we want to get a better estimate instead of trying to guesstimate an estimate now and then change it on the board again during the finance committee. So we want to give you one number and then carry that number through, hopefully.
Okay, thank you.
James really hit the nail on the head. I just wanted to add to that, with the schedule being what it is. Again, this is a priority project. It has a fast track schedule. The consultant's aware of that. This is not the last the board is going to hear of this project this year even. So it's an aggressive project for important reasons for the district.
Any other questions or comments by the board?
Quick one.
Director Pennick?
Did I miss it? I'm looking at the overhead for 345. And usually with profit and overhead, that's outside contractors or labor. What's the overhead?
So that is just overhead based on our financial. And Wes, you could probably help me out on this, but we go through an overhead calculation every year, and I believe our overhead's around 3 currently, and that gets charged directly to capital jobs and also to projects that have deposits on. So from the engineering side, if we spend an hour on time, there's a multiplier of 2 point something on top of that. So the total cost is 3 between actual paying staff and the overhead. I know I'm a little bit off on the actual, but it's the full burden cost, including labor and overhead, is about 3.
So that's in-house stuff.
Yeah, and there is no profit on that. That's reimbursement of actual costs.
Yeah, James, you're pretty close. If you look at the 4th, 5th, and 6th line items, those are the direct staff costs, and you add those up, that's 150,000. And then when you take our overhead rate is about 210%. So you just about double that to get up to this 345,000, which is the staff overhead. So the lines 4 through 7 constitute the staff costs that will be charged to this project.
So that's just for allocation purposes mainly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not additional money we're looking for, just to track where our costs are, where our staff costs are.
That's what I was, okay, that exactly. Okay, thank you.
So Ryan, thank you for the presentation. Sounds like this emergency bypass sewer pipeline is well overdue for, in 1969. I mean, that's been in place since I've been alive, before I was alive. so I'm glad that you guys are looking at it, and it sounds like this is a first step, and there's going to be a number of updates along the way for both the finance committee and the full board. So appreciate you addressing what could potentially be a risk of failure of this line. So thank you. I'll entertain any motions if any of the board members have one.
Entertain a motion to approve, Hernandez.
Okay, is there a second?
Second, Pinnick.
Discussion?
Yep, discussion. Yep, Director Hernandez.
I would ask that the Finance Committee look, once we get the full amount, look very closely at that overhead amount. On smaller projects, I appreciate it, but as you can see here, just on this piece alone, it's darn near half. And when we get the full picture, I don't want a 2 million plus the additional pipeline turning into 3 million, turning into 4 million because of overhead. So I would request that the Finance Committee look very closely at that amount. That line item.
Okay, fair enough. Any other discussion? Director Boyd Hodgson.
Thank you. I would add that since this is an unknown figure, that perhaps we consider where we will have to cut to pay for this. I think that that's a fair ask, and it's just something to be thinking about. But you know, it's an outstanding balance that we don't really have a firm idea of how much it's going to cost. And if we approve tonight the application of these fees, the design engineering, that means that we're starting down the process, and it's not going to be retrievable, or so we can't really walk it back. So I would ask James and his staff to think about, if we do go over budget, where we will cut. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that'll be part of the broader conversation for the CIP portion of the budget as we go forward.
Great. Good feedback. Any questions from the audience or the public?
Ryan, could you stop sharing your screen, please, so I can get full functionality back here? I do not see any members of the public desiring to speak at this point in time.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to approve item 2.1 as presented by staff. We'll go ahead and conduct a roll call vote. Director Boyd Hodgson.
Yes.
Director Elthart.
Yes.
Director Pinnick.
Yes.
Director Hernandez.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item 2.2, the Aqua JPI refund check. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll take that one. So Vallecitos is a member agency of the Aqua JPIA, which is a Joint Powers Insurance Authority. So what they do is they provide insurance for us, and the way they do reconciliation at the end of the year, we pay a premium up front, just like you would pay for any insurance. And if you're, depending on your claims history throughout the year, you're eligible for a refund check at the end of the year. So fortunately, this is the 4th year in a row we've been able to come back to the board and say that in both our workers' comp and our liability policies, we've had such a good low claims history that we're eligible for a refund. So this year it's $149,764 that we're eligible for. I don't know that we've received the check yet. Normally, Aqua JPIA would come in front of us with the big check. The board may remember that the last meeting, our March 3rd meeting, I mentioned this amount in my general manager's report. And at that point in time, Director Hernandez asked that we agendize this item so that the board can discuss what to do with the funds. So just for a little bit of history, and it's in the staff report, starting on page 74, for the last 3 years, I mentioned this is the 4th year in a row, but for the last 3 years, I'll tell you what the board decided to do with the refunds. So in 2018, the board designated that a portion of the JPI refund was given as employee bonuses, because it's through the employees' efforts that we keep our claims history low, both in workers' comp and in liability. So in 2018, the refund was $145,000, and the bonuses were $1,000 per employee. In 2019, Vallecitos received a refund check from Aqua JPIA in the amount of a little over $165,000. And the board directed us to do 2 things with that. One is apply the bulk of it towards our CalPERS unfunded accrued liability, because that's one of our biggest debts. That's any outstanding amount, we're paying a 7% debt. So the board directed us to use the bulk of the funds to pay that down. And they also set aside a $5,000 amount for an employee appreciation event. And that was going to happen in 2020, but due to COVID, it hasn't happened. So we still have that money earmarked. And when COVID's done, we'll use those funds to have some type of a reopening employee appreciation event. And then the third year, last year in 2020, we got a check for $95,247. And those were simply placed into the water and wastewater reserve accounts. And I think most of that was because of the uncertainty of COVID. We weren't sure what was going to happen, the financial impacts of COVID. So this is the fourth year. And so we have this check for $149,764. And one thing staff does have a recommendation. Item 1.4 in tonight's agenda was on the consent calendar, and that was for the COVID testing costs, where we brought in an outside party to come in and provide COVID testing for our employees. Those total costs were $92,050. So a recommendation would be to use that amount of money from the Aqua JPIA refund to cover our unexpected COVID testing costs. And that would leave a balance of $50,714 at the board's discretion. So I think Director Hernandez mentioned that maybe talk about gain sharing, which is sharing with the employees to recognize their efforts, or whatever else the board may want to do with that $57,714. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, President Sanella.
President Sanella, I would like
Director Hernandez.
I would like to make a motion that we take and pay part of the funds to the COVID relief for $92,050, and the balance be divided amongst the employees. And as the board is part of the employee structure, eliminate us from that division.
Okay. I'll second that, Director Hernandez, just so we can open it up for discussion. And since I second it, I'll go ahead and start us off with the discussion this time. I think it's a good idea. I think that's it's a way to meet this unexpected, unbudgeted cost that we incurred through COVID. But it's also a way to recognize our employees for their safe practices and safe behavior. And I think it's all of our wishes and goals that our employees go home in the same condition every day that they arrive to work in. But in addition to that, when they work safe, it saves our customers, our ratepayers, money, and less claims, less insurance costs, less lawsuits, and on and on. So I do think that we should give them some of this back in recognition. I think just to kind of simplify it, Director Hernandez, if you'd be willing to modify, kind of what I was thinking was that maybe we do $500 gross, not net, so gross, before taxes, to each of the employees, excluding the board and also excluding senior management.
I would agree to that modification.
Okay, I'll open it up to the rest of the board for any discussion or questions.
I had a question, just to get some framework.
Yep.
So I don't know if you can even disclose this. I mean, we're getting about $150,000 a year back. What's our premium?
No, I don't know what the premium is. I don't think Trisha's still on here, and I don't know if Rondi's has that information.
Okay. I was just wondering what percent we're getting back, and so I agree. I mean, I agree with, pay for the COVID relief, and then the remaining goes to the employees. Sometimes what benefits us in the long term is if we can roll some of that back over into the premium. So, and that can build up where in maybe 2-3 years, we can really make a difference. I mean, $500 an employee is great, but if we roll over any refunds into the premium, next year we'd get, $220 back. The following year, we'd get maybe $300 back. And then in 3 years from now, then we can reimburse these employees $2,500, $3,000 per, if we do a more longer term approach and say, hey, if we keep safe, have more of a longer term approach, then your bonus could be, then we can make a difference. I mean, $500, they'll go out and they'll go out for a night and it's gone. But if we can really make a difference in some of these long-term employees by being safe, and if we roll that over our premium, then I think that would be really neat to give them a larger bonus down the road. It's just more of a longer term approach, but just a
Interesting.
Just a thought.
Director Boyd Hodgson. Thanks, Director Pennick.
So I appreciate my colleagues' expertise in the insurance business. I take issue with the comment about how our employees will spend their money. I think some of our employees would probably spend that on food. So I do have a question. You know, it was noted that it cost $92,000 to pay for the tests, and maybe this is the same question that Director Pennick asked. I'm just not using the same language, but if it cost $92,000 to pay for the tests, did we bill that to our own insurance, and do we get any reimbursement from that, or do we have to pay that in cash?
We paid that in cash. We wrote a check to our occupational health partners. They're called work partners. So we paid that. They invoiced us, and we paid that amount from our funds.
Okay.
And I don't think it's eligible for reimbursement.
Okay. And just one other comment. I agree in principle with paying down, you know, this cash balance to cover this unexpected budget item. I don't agree with exempting upper management, because I feel like upper management, that's where the values of the employees come from. And I feel like if the employees are keeping themselves safe, it is because they are looking to their upper management, and it speaks to the leadership team in the upper management. I do agree with exempting the board. Thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that comment. I'm gonna take myself out of the equation. I will not accept any of the money. So it reduces it by one, but I would suggest that we recognize the rest of the upper management team, which is my 4 direct reports.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Director Boyd Hodgson, and point taken. And I'm willing to modify. I don't even know what you'd call it. My modification to the modification of the.
And I'll modify my motions of a modification.
But yeah, I think we're all kind of, there's some consensus here.
And so the board knows we have about 100, excluding myself, we have 101 currently filled positions. So if it's $500 per, that's about $50,000 would go towards the employees.
Yeah, and I like that because it leaves a little bit, you know, whatever that might, like $6,000 or whatever that is, for the associated administrative costs, right? I don't know if it's going to be $6,000 to do this, but there's going to be some sort of cost to do this, right? And so that kind of helps offset that as well. It leaves a little bit there behind for any, you know, any cost that it might take to do this, like, you know, printing checks, paper, or whatever it might be. I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty low cost. We're doing it mostly internal.
Could I just suggest for clarity that perhaps you withdraw the prior motion and restate what you're going to approve so it's clear?
You can't follow that, sir? I would
have a motion modified 3 times.
Yeah, okay. I will move that the funds go to reducing and eliminating the $92,050, and the balance of the money go to all the employees, excluding the board of directors.
And Glenn.
And the
general
manager.
Right.
Yeah, okay. And general manager or any other staff member that wants to opt out.
And yeah, but it's specific to $500 per employee, right?
Yes.
All right, I second that. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I just had a question.
Yep.
On the COVID testing, is it clear to anybody yet that the stimulus package that was just passed will have funds to reimburse that?
It's not clear to me. They put some money in a pool of funds, but your ability to access those funds and how successful you'll be is not clear at this point in time.
Okay.
I think they might be eligible, but what you're competing against is not clear.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so any other discussion? Any public request to speak?
Nobody from the public has raised their hand.
Okay, so we have a motion by Director Hernandez, a second by Director Sanella. We'll go ahead and conduct a roll call vote. Director Pennick.
Yes.
Director Elthart.
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson.
Yes.
Director Hernandez.
Absolutely, yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. Great job. Moving right along, we will go to item 2.3, refunded proceeds from the resolution of the lawsuits between San Diego County Water Authority and Metropolitan Water District of Southern California.
And I'll take that item, President Sanella. And
Okay.
before I do, I just want to thank the board for the last item. The staff will greatly appreciate that gesture. So I've updated the board via email on this topic, but wanted to bring it in front of the board to see what we want to do with the money. So I guess the good news continues. So the last item, we got 150,000 through an Aqua JPIA refund. And in this one, we got a check from the San Diego County Water Authority for almost $1.6 million. The board's aware that the Water Authority and the Metropolitan Water District have been involved in litigation for quite some time regarding how Metropolitan sets its rates, which Water Authority has to pay. And we obviously have to pay money to the Water Authority. So there's this trickle down effect. And so Metropolitan does a 2-year budget and rate setting cycle. So these lawsuits, there have been numerous lawsuits, but they've been filed in 2-year increments. So some of the lawsuits have been resolved. 2 of the lawsuits, the first one involves years 2011 through 2012, and the second one is 2013 and 2014. So collectively, it resolves the lawsuits between 2011 and 2014. The Water Authority prevailed on many of the points of the lawsuit, not all of them, but some of them. And the judge determined that the Metropolitan owed the County Water Authority $44.4 million that they were overcharged. In addition to that, there's some legal fees that are still subject to being determined. The Water Authority was determined to be the prevailing party, even though they didn't win on all aspects of the case. So that by majority vote, they are the prevailing party, and they could benefit to the tune of another $13 million. But that's not the subject tonight. So the subject tonight is Metropolitan did pay the Water Authority $44.4 million. The Water Authority board determined to allocate 100% of those funds to its member agencies, of which we are one, proportionate to the amount of money that each of those agencies contributed in that 4-year time frame. So when you do the math, and it's fairly complicated, Vallecitos' share is $1,590,623.74. And those funds were wired transferred to Vallecitos from the Water Authority on Thursday, March 4th, which was the day after our last board meeting where I mentioned it during the general manager's report. The board asked me to put this on the agenda today so that the board can determine what we're going to do with that money. The staff report talks about numerous ways it can be used, but maybe I'll start backwards and say what it cannot be used for. So these were funds that were paid for by water customers, so it can't be used on anything wastewater. It has to be segregated to the water side. And since it was paid for by ratepayers, it cannot be used for the capacity fund. So we've talked quite a bit about the deficit or shortfall that exists in the capacity fund. These monies cannot be used for that. So it's really relegated to that one quadrant of the 4 quadrants we talk about a lot, which is water replacement funds. But once you're within that, there's a fair amount of latitude of what you can do with the funds. And on page 77 of the staff report, it lists some things, and it's not meant to be exclusive, but just some ideas. You can use it to defray your operating costs, which is personnel, electricity, materials and supplies, and things like that. You can use it to defray future water costs. So the bills that we get from the Water Authority, we can dip into these funds instead of using our other funds. You can use it to build capital projects as long as it's related to water replacement. So you can't build something that's intended to service future development, but if you have to replace a current asset for current customers, you can use it for that. You can use it for things like fleet, if you have fleet needs that support water operations. And similar to the Aqua JPIA funds that were used back in 2019, I believe, you can use it to pay down the PERS unfunded accrued liability. Another option is to reimburse our customers. And you heard Ms. Martin speak at the beginning of the meeting and encouraging the board to use it to reimburse customers. And that's certainly an option. It's certainly legal. It's very problematic and very difficult administratively to figure out who should be reimbursed and to what extent they should be reimbursed. So I just want to, the reason it's on the agenda is just to let the board have a full discussion. If we don't resolve it today, that's fine. There's no time limit. We've got the money. It's being invested, so we're earning interest on it. We're not in danger of losing it. There's no shot clock that expires. So I want the board to be thoughtful and provide good, clear direction on what to do with that almost $1.6 million. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, President Sanella.
Okay, the first hand I saw was Director Hernandez.
Yes, President Sanella. It's quite easy for me. I would move that we take the full amount and divide it by the water service customers and give them a check or reduce on their next bill. It's their money. They deserve it. We've taken it, had to give it to the water authority, give it Metropolitan, so it rightfully should belong to them.
Thank you, Director Hernandez. Anybody else have any questions or comments at this time? Director Boyd Hodgson.
So, we've heard from a customer tonight, a business customer, small business customer that is in our service area, and they're in the middle of a very complicated situation that I understand we're going to be talking about at a later meeting. I see this money as an opportunity to also credit some of our business owners who have been struggling during COVID-19. So I would move and
point of order, Mr. President.
Yep.
There is a motion that I made on the floor.
Okay, I second your motion. Second.
Okay, very good. Now we can go into discussion.
Yeah, and I apologize, Director Hernandez. I thought that was just a comment. I didn't realize it was a motion.
No, it was a motion.
My bad. My bad.
All right.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. So let's go ahead and continue with the discussion. Go ahead, Director Boyd Hodgson.
So I would suggest that we also include some of our business customers in this reallocation of funds. And I would amend the motion to lay it on the table for next meeting until we can hear specifically from one of our customers and maybe generalize that to other customers as well in the business arena.
I'm not willing to amend my motion. I believe we have all the customers, they've all paid, rather than spend staff time and money trying to figure out allocations for user groups or gallons per meeting or other. Across the board split to all of our water service ratepayers, that it should be divided equally.
All right, just a point of clarification for myself. I think you guys might be talking about the same thing, but let me know if you're not. So Director Hernandez, when you say water ratepayers, you're not just talking about residential water payers. You're talking about businesses,
no, everyone,
anybody who purchases water from Vallecitos, right?
Yes.
That's right. That's what I took it as too.
Yeah.
So I think at least from that standpoint, I think you guys are both in agreement. I guess the only thing that then would be left for discussion would be, do we just do it tonight, or do we have staff come back and give us some options? And I want to get to Director Pinnick and Director Lothar. My initial thought, and I like the train of thought where we're going with this. I'm 100% in agreement with both of you. I would like to give staff an opportunity to, take a couple of weeks and really kind of hash this out and give us an option or two with some real hard detail as to the best way of doing this. If it's as simple as taking the total amount of money that was awarded and then just dividing it by 22,500 water customers or whatever that number is, then so be it. But if I'm also with you, Director Hernandez. I don't think we need to get into the well, this person has this size meter and this, I mean, I think we'd spend $1 million trying to figure that out. So, but I do think we should, in fairness to staff, give them an opportunity to come back give them direction tonight that, hey, this is what the board wants to do. We want to give this money back to our water customers. But, give us some options on how to do that. And then let us discuss and then decide how to do that. But I'll leave it with, or I'll open it up to Director Pinnick or Director Alatarp if they have any questions or comments.
Go ahead, Director Pennick.
I don't know if I want to decide tonight because that is a big decision. There's a lot of money on the table. I'd like to discuss. I'd like to hear more. Give the opportunity to the public to voice their concern. I mean, if I just did the math, 1.5 million, 5,000 customers. That's only $66 per. Again, I know I said it on the last one. Is that really going to make a difference to everybody? I mean, we might want to discuss some options for business owners, for residential owners. I know I don't want to get in the weeds with it and all that, but at least give the public an opportunity to receive whether it's a refund, a flat rate, whatever, an option, or at least an option to discuss. So I don't feel comfortable deciding tonight on what to do with it. I mean, I agree with what's been said thus far. Yes, ratepayers, they paid it, they deserve it. That's who it goes back to. Any refund should go back to the person who it deserves. But I don't know. I'd just like to discuss a little longer. That's where I'm at.
Okay. Director Alatarp?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same place. I don't want to decide tonight, and I'd like to see some options also of working it into the budget development as well. And so my suggestion is maybe run it through the Finance Committee to come up with some options, both direct options for direct refunds to customers, as well as working a couple of scenarios through the budget to offset purchased water costs in the upcoming budget. Maybe an option using all of it, or maybe another option using half of it, and maybe the other half directly to customers. I don't know, maybe a combination. So that's where I'm at. I'd like to see some different options.
Okay. Any other board comments or? I guess I have a question, Glenn. If so the next scheduled finance meeting is Monday. Is it too late to put this matter? I know that the money's sitting in the bank, it's collecting interest. There's not that sense of urgency from that standpoint, but there is a bit of I think an urgency just to. It sounds like there's consensus from the board to at least give some or all of this back to the ratepayers, and we just got to figure out logistically the way to do it. But is it too late to get this onto the Finance Committee for Monday?
No, we haven't posted the agenda yet, so it's not too late. It is a little late for staff to do any kind of in-depth analysis, but I would suggest let's put it on the agenda. We'll present what we've been able to analyze between now and then, and maybe get some better clarification from the Finance Committee. That'd be fine. And while I have the microphone, I'm not going to yield the floor yet. I just need a little clarification. So with Director Hernandez's recommendation, are we talking about current customers? So remember, this is lawsuits that were revolving around 2011 through 2014. Those are the people that paid into this fund. And that's when in my initial presentation, I want to caution us, going back in time is very difficult to try to figure out who paid what percentage and are they even customers anymore and where are they? So if we want to look at just current customers, I'm fine with that. I just want to get that clarity. And the other, I'd like to talk a little bit about whether it's a refund check or a credit towards their bill. And there's some reasons for that. COVID has caused a lot of people to be in arrears in their payments. I'd like to think that we can apply their portion towards the arrears, not just give them a check, because then we may never see any of that money. So that's just something for the board to consider as well. And Director Pennick's math was pretty close, and we've done a little bit of the analysis. And I think there's two ways to do this. One is to take the $1.6 million divided by our actual meter count, and that would be $72.50 to every customer if you treat them all equally. Another way to do it is to look at what we call meter equivalents. Somebody with a bigger meter usually pays a bigger water bill and would be entitled to a bigger refund. if you use that approach, our meter equivalent account is way more than our individual meter account. And a typical single family homeowner would be eligible for a refund of $55.16 using that approach. People with bigger meters would get more than the $72 using an average approach. So we can go into greater depth with that with the finance committee, but it may be helpful to get some general consensus from the board as to what are we talking about? An even split or a prorated split, current customers, future customers, refund versus credit. So I'll leave it with that. And these things get complicated quickly.
Yeah, President Sanilla, I just wanted to add, I would put 2 cents in for kicking this over, because I would hope you're going to do something that is 218 compliant, given that this is a refund of rate funds. So we need to ensure that whatever methodology you adopt is defensible from a ratepayer challenge standpoint, since it was rates that are being essentially refunded.
No, I appreciate that, Mr. Gilpin, and we definitely want to, whatever we do, we want to operate within the laws. And I think we all recognize this is a bit of an uncharted territory, right? We don't normally just have $1.6 million kind of fall into our ratepayers' laps, and we're trying to figure it out. And that's why I think, and that's even more of a reason to kind of have follow-up meetings on this and more discussion. While I do appreciate and can understand that the folks on the board want to act as quickly as we can to return the money, we just got to make sure that we do so in a way that's both fair but also legal. Director Hernandez, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I've got a motion on the floor that's been seconded, and
I know.
okay.
The motion on the floor is to lay it on the table.
No, it is not. The motion on the floor is to divide it amongst the water service ratepayers equally, which I guess was going to be the $66 and pennies. That was my motion, and that's what I believe you seconded, Director Boyd Hodgkins.
I did, and then we discussed it, and I made an amendment, and that's what we vote on next, to vote to lay it on the table, and then we go back to the original motion. That's the way parliamentary procedure works.
I believe I have to agree with that, and I don't believe I did.
Yeah, I think we're talking a difference between amended motions and substitute motions. So maybe I'll look to Mr. Gilpin to help guide us through this process.
Well, is there a second? Director Boyd Hodgkins, did you intend yours as a substitute motion for?
It was an amendment.
And there's no second to the amendment?
There was no second. You're correct. There was no second.
Yeah, so I guess
we go back to the
without a second to her amendment, then you're back to the original.
There was not an ask for a second. There was not an ask.
Okay, President Sanilla, if hers was an amendment to the motion, you need to ask for if there's a second to her amended.
Yeah, motion. I didn't realize it was an amendment. But is there a second to the amendment, and just more discussion? We can vote on this and see how the outcome is, and then go and have another motion. So that's always a possibility too. But is there a second to the amendment?
Yeah. And the amendment is to table this. Is that correct?
Essentially, to send it to the finance committee is what I understood.
Yeah, shouldn't it be a substitute motion?
I think it should be.
It should be. Whether it's an amendment or a substitute, it's a second.
I'll go ahead and make a substitute motion.
Okay.
And move that we delay or table this vote tonight and send it to the finance committee.
I'll second that substitute motion. And with the comment that I think we're all pretty close to on the same page here. I think we all have the same goal. Let's take a week or a week and a half to really chew on this a little bit more and come up with a really good solution for our ratepayers. And we want to do this as quickly as possible, but we want to also make sure we do it right. So with that, my understanding, it's been a while since we've had a substitute motion, but my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Gilpin, is that we have to vote on the substitute motion before we vote on the original motion, right?
That's correct, President Sanella.
Okay, so I'll do a roll call vote for the substitute motion, which is to table this and send it to the table this item and send it to the Finance Committee for additional discussion with staff and most likely some sort of recommendation to the full board at a later date. Director Pinnock.
Yes.
Director Hernandez.
No.
Director Boyd Hodgson.
Yes.
Director Ellithart.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So the motion passes 4-1. Thank you all for the lively discussion. And so, Jim, do we have to do anything now with the original motion, or does this supersede it? Or I need some help with that.
No, you don't have to do anything with the original. The substitute took its place, given that it passed.
Great. Okay, so then that concludes this item. Is there? I didn't even ask, but is there any public comment further in addition to what was said earlier?
Yeah, Miss Gail Martin does have her hand raised, but she already provided comment on this during public comment, so I don't know if we are obligated to allow her.
I'd like to. I mean,
Okay.
we took away the reading earlier, so let's try to be as open to people who want to come and speak as we can.
Okay. Miss Martin, you feel free to make your comment now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much for giving me the pleasure of speaking again. I just wanted to ask the directors, how do you plan on making known to the ratepayers that there is going to be this discussion about what to do with this windfall? If it just appears on the agenda for the Finance Committee meeting, the public is not going to be aware that this is something that they may want to weigh in on. How would the board like to address informing the ratepayers that this is going to be a discussion in the Finance Committee and also on a board committee?
If I can, President Sabella, typically the posting of the agenda is the public notice. If the board wanted us to do more and put something on a website or something, we can do that. But given the short time we have, I don't know that it's going to get more traction than just putting it on the notice for the upcoming Finance Committee meeting.
Yeah, I mean, we don't typically do anything. We don't advertise through social media or newspapers or anything like that on any other items, right, Glenn?
Nope. The only thing we would do is if we had like a rate hearing, then there's a legal requirement for noticing. But for regular board meetings and committee meetings, we don't do anything beyond normal posting of the agenda.
The other piece is this has to come back to the board for action anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the committee meeting agenda will provide notice, but there will be a future board meeting, presumably.
And Mr. Gilpin, that's a good point for clarity. Nothing's going to be decided permanently at the Finance Committee, right? You're going to look at opportunities and alternatives and come back and report to the board and look for direction at that point in time.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Director Ellithart has a question.
Yeah.
Oh, Director Ellithart, sorry.
Yeah, I'd also like to point out to everybody that we should get this right, because in the ongoing rate litigation for the 2015 through 2018 cases that are going on right now, there's an additional $30 million that were of the same type of charges that were collected by Metropolitan that are in all likelihood going to be rebated as well. So
good point.
It's kind of a happy problem to have, but there's the 13 or so million dollars of attorney's fees that are yet to be recovered, as well as nearly 30 million more in overcharges by Met, the same type of overcharge that we're getting rebated right now.
Okay.
Keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
If you apply the same proration that the Water Authority did for this 44 million, you're looking at another $1 million check to Vallecitos, plus attorney's fees.
that is potentially good news. Thank you for sharing, Director Elithart.
Sure.
Any other comments, questions before we move on? Great. Thank you, guys. Okay, we're going to move on to item 2.4, CSDA Board of Directors, Seat A. Glenn, you want to give us a little background on this one?
Yeah, just real quick. We're a member of the California Special Districts Association, and they're accepting nominations to serve on their board. We do have a request from Director Joe McKenzie of the Vista Irrigation District, and she has asked that we support her nomination, but I feel it appropriate to ask our board first. If any of our board members are interested, let me know, and then we'll bring an item back at the next agenda to adopt a resolution of support. And if none of our directors are interested in serving, then the question is, do we want to support Joe McKenzie's request? And Ms. McKenzie is in attendance at the meeting tonight, so I'm sure she may want to speak at the appropriate time.
Okay. I guess the first question is do any of our board members want, are you even interested in the position? Director Boyd Hodgson.
I would be interested in the position. I appreciate that someone else is also interested. It's not clear to me why we would support someone not in Vallecitos Water District. So if I could get some clarification around that, but I would be interested in serving.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe they call it a concurring nomination, that they look for support from adjoining agencies to support a director from another. That doesn't mean it supersedes your own agency's desire to have a representative on there. So this was just if none of us are interested, I think that would be a reasonable step is to consider Joe McKenzie's request for a concurring nomination. Otherwise, we'll take whatever direction the board gives.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the other board members?
Just a quick one.
Yep.
What does the board do?
So California Special Districts Association, I'm not that directly involved with it. I think maybe Director Elithart would be good to point. I'm not sure if you have a role, you're more in CASA. But they just generally provide oversight for special districts. It's an association of associations, basically. So any agency that's a special district can become part of them. They help you look into legislation and governance, kind of big picture issues. Maybe help you look for funding opportunities, things like that. So it's kind of the equivalent of like ACWA, the Association of California Water Agencies, that kind of take the big picture look at these things and try to help their member agencies navigate their way through a myriad of issues that special districts face. And if there's any directors that are more actively involved with CSDA, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I would also add that they, like Aqua, they have a joint powers insurance arm that they can insure members with.
Now, hey, Glenn, just to clarify for me, tonight's vote is not that, we don't have the authority to vote and actually give the position, right? We're kind of endorsing a candidate. Is that, and then there's going to be some sort of CSDA vote down the road of their membership, right?
Yeah, in the interest of time, I kind of summarized too much. You're right. So all we're doing is submitting a nomination. So whether we support Joe McKenzie's or we put forth our own, we're just throwing a hat in the CSDA ring, and then they go through their internal process of figuring out who they want to select for that seat.
Okay. So just one person's perspective, and this really isn't easy to say because Joe McKenzie's somebody I know personally and is a friend, but I don't think that we've ever had somebody on our own board that was interested. So I feel like we need to support our own board member to the extent that we're able to with a letter. And then Joe and Director Boyd Hodgson can go and campaign this out in the CSDA appropriate venue. But I think Joe's done a phenomenal job for many years. She's a superstar in my opinion, but I think we have to support our own teammate.
And I would, Joe McKenzie does have her hand raised to speak. So
Okay.
At the appropriate time. I saw Director Hernandez's hand up. I'm not sure what you want to do.
Yeah, Director Hernandez.
That was it, to let Director
So,
McKenzie speak.
thank-
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. McKenzie.
Thank you. Yes, as he said, I'm Joe McKenzie, and I am a director on the Vista Irrigation District. I've served as the representative director for the Southern Network for a number of years. I've served CSDA as also as president. And CSDA is an association of 1,000 different special districts. Aqua is an association only for water districts and or cities that have a water department. Their focus is strictly water. CSDA's focus is more for governance, but it's also will work with Aqua and support their bills that they are sponsoring. And there's probably about 11 at this point in time regarding forestry and also then wildfires. And we get into, that realm. Also, we have an educational component, everything from the Brown Act, information on 218. And then we also have the Governance Academy, which all directors are required to either have taken or take in the first 2 years of their term on the CSDA board. Time requirement, it can be intense because of the number of meetings that you have. Right now, the Zoom makes it easy to coordinate all of your meetings, but it is required to be in Sacramento for the board meetings and for your committee meetings. So they can be very time consuming, and I have been very lucky over the years because I own my own business and can juggle my time accordingly so that neither my business nor my volunteerism for CSDA is impacted. Also, I'm president of the CSDA Finance Corps, and your general manager was talking about the fact that you're paying your 7% to JPIA. Has your finance committee discussed the possibility of refinancing or financing some of that OPED? Right now, rates are very competitive. CSDA is very competitive with just about everybody out there, but we do make refinancing and financing for OPED a little bit easier because they tend to be hold your hand and walk you through the process. But it's basically the same methodology as refinancing your house. If you've got a house at 7% interest, if you refinance it at 3%, the interest that you're paying is about half. So you may want to add that to your agenda for your finance committee to contemplate. It would save you money in the long run, whether you refinance with through the CSDA Finance Corps, or you decide to refinance it with someone else. But right now, rates are competitive. So
Thank you, Joe, and thank you for your service.
thank you.
So I don't know if we need a motion, Glenn, or is there any more discussion from the board?
Well, just clarification, what are we endorsing? Are we recommending? Are we campaigning? What are we doing?
So I guess it depends if you're talking about supporting Director Boyd Hodgson's request, what we would do is come back at our next meeting with a resolution of support that could accompany her nomination form, because a form has to be filled out and submitted to CSDA for consideration. And part of that is a form that's signed by the board president. So Director Snella would be signing it, but it would be nice to have the board officially say, yeah, we support Director Boyd Hodgson, and President Sinella would sign it, and it would accompany Director Boyd Hodgson's package up there. And then the process is out of our control, other than if there's any campaigning that's done behind the scenes to develop support for the nomination.
Glenn, I'm sorry, President Snell, just to clarify, I looked up, I mean, we would be under the nomination procedures, we would be required to make a nomination of Director Boyd Hodgkins. And according to their website, that nomination is due by March 29th, which would be prior to our next meeting, GM Prum, I think. And then,
Yeah, I thought it was an April date, but
yeah, I just pulled up their website. They may not have updated, but that's what they're showing. Also, there's a number of commitments that person would be expected to make, which is attending 4 to 5 meetings, board meetings in Sacramento, and participating in at least one committee, which would meet 3 to 5 times a year, according to their website, and attending, the CSADA or CSDA events, and also completing 4 modules of their Special District Leadership Academy.
Are you ready for that, Director Boyd Hodgkins?
So it wasn't clear to me the quantity of time that I would spend in Sacramento. But I'm not ready to remove my interest from the table. It sounds like a great opportunity. And I am still interested, and it looks like I have a few days to talk to my husband about my travel, and then potentially remove that interest, in which case I think we should throw our support to Ms. McKenzie. But I'm not ready to withdraw my interest just yet. So thank you.
So given the timing conflicts that Mr. Gilpin just made us aware of, what are your thoughts, Glenn, as far as, how do we get this all done in time, one way or the other?
well, so the following item is a LAFCO item, which is similar, but that only requires the signature of the president. This one may require a full resolution of the board, in which case we would have to call a special meeting, I would say, before the deadline. And I thought the deadline was in April, but if that's the will of the board, we can have a very short meeting. If Director Boyd Hodgson, connects with me and says, yes, I'm still interested, I got the hall pass from my husband and ready to commit to this, then we can prepare a resolution, put it on an agenda, have the board approve it, and it could be a very quick item.
Okay. Director Hernandez?
Yeah, I think it's appropriate for us to go ahead and make the nomination. If Director Boyd Hodgkins eliminates herself, fine. We don't have to worry about it. But if she says go ahead, we'll have a special board meeting, and then let her and Director McKenzie do the voting requirement and see where the chips fall. If you recall, I just requested to be on the Aqua board, and was politely told, no, thank you, you didn't win. So it doesn't mean that it's going to happen, but at least given a chance. So I think that's,
that's where I stand too. I mean, I know that Director McKenzie is well qualified and has been doing this a long time and does a phenomenal job. But I think on any of these positions and boards, if we have a Vallecitos board member who's interested, then we should support our own teammate to at least get them to the next step of the process, and then wish them good luck.
Yeah.
So I guess Director Boyd Hodgson, if you could do all of us a favor and maybe have the communications that you need to internally, and then get back to Glenn and let us know if we need to have a special meeting for you.
Thank you. And thank you for the support. It really means a lot. Thank you.
I think you'd be great.
Super. And thank you for joining us, Director McKenzie, and we wish you the best as well. Okay. Do you need anything else, Glenn, on this item?
I don't.
Okay.
Okay, so are we ready for the next item?
Yeah, I'm scrolling down here on my agenda. I'm going electronic this time.
Yeah, I'll jump in if you don't mind. It's item 2.5 is the Local Agency Formation Commission, which is LAFCO. They're looking for nominations, very similar to the last item. They have a vacant position of an unexpired term as an alternate special district member. and they're looking for anybody who's interested. Aaron Lump from Rincon del Diablo has vacated her seat, and the seat only lasts till May 1st of 2023. So whoever's selected their term will expire May 1st, 2023. So again, we do have to submit a letter of a packet for nomination, and it does require that the legislative body approve it, but it needs to only be signed by the president.
Okay.
So with that, if anybody's interested, we can package the information together. Otherwise, there's no action required.
Okay. Same question. Is anybody interested? I don't see people flying out of their seats on this one. So we're gonna we'll voluntold Director Pennick. I'll sign it after the meeting, Glenn.
All right, I don't know what it is. That's what I'm looking at it going, what is LAFCO?
I'm just teasing. It doesn't look like there's any interest, so we'll go ahead and move on.
Well, I mean, there's no interest just because to be honest, I don't even know what I'm looking at. I'm trying to look at LAFCO now.
Is there a deadline, Glenn, as to when you need this done by?
That may be the April one I was thinking of. Yeah, that's Friday, April 23rd. So I can meet with if Director Pennick, if you're interested, I can get together with you after the meeting sometime and try to educate you and myself on all the things that LAFCO does to see if you're interested.
Yeah, I mean, when I volunteer for a board, I'd like to know, because I'd like to know what's required, but also if I have anything to add to the commission, if I have no interest, if it's about, I don't know, how to keep windows clean, I don't know, I'm using something, and I have just no interest, it's not going to be exciting. But if it's something, down the insurance side or finance side or policy side or public awareness side, yeah, but I don't know what it is.
Okay, and no pressure, Director Pennick. I was completely.
Even though I was voluntold, I get you.
Okay, so Glenn, if you want to connect with Director Pennick afterwards, or any of the other board members who might have an interest in it, please do so. And it sounds like we have enough time to come back if they decide that they want to go forth with that.
Okay.
Okay. Item 2.6, retiree health premium reimbursement plan for the position of general manager.
Yeah, so this is an implementation step of a decision that the board made back in November or December, and I'm going to ask that Mr. Gilpin lead the discussion on this item.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Jim Pruitt. This is, as General Manager Pruitt indicated, this is a continuation of the compensation item that was approved by the prior board for a $12,000 contribution to a retiree health premium reimbursement plan. So the action that we're recommending that the board take today is to approve the establishment of that account so that those funds can be deposited into that account for this retiree health premium reimbursement plan. There's, as indicated, there's no fiscal impacts beyond the previously approved $12,000 one-time lump sum contribution to that plan. I'm happy to answer questions, but this is just a administrative item to set up the account.
And I'll add a little bit. This creates no further obligation on the part of the board. It's not like an OPEB system where the board is responsible for the retired employees' medical costs, whatever they are in the future. This is a one-time contribution, and if it doesn't cover healthcare costs, then that's on me. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Any question, Director Boyd Hodgson?
So I remember when this came before the board and was approved, and I thought it was a very odd request. It's still not sitting right with me that we are sort of so involved in a very private decision. And I'm not sure why it's before the board or why we're considering it, because I don't think we consider these types of decisions for other employees. So I guess I just require a little bit of clarification. It feels very invasive. that we're talking about this, and it feels like it's not appropriate to come before the board.
Well, I would say one, it is appropriate item. This is an item that is commonly used in public agencies, particularly in executive compensation. I have a PERS specialist in my firm who worked on this development of this with Glenn. It's a way to provide a benefit to an employee as a one-time benefit that isn't PERSable. It does provide the GM with, I guess, some benefit in that this is tax-free contribution, et cetera, but it is a element that is used in executive compensation in public agencies. And although it may sound strange and individual, it's common, and it's not anything nefarious or unusual.
So is this, I guess my question would also be, why wasn't this negotiated as part of your salary or your most recent contract? Why are we doing it now, and why wasn't it talked about?
It was negotiated. Jim Prooms is eligible for a annual bonus, and in lieu of a cash annual bonus, the request was to make this substitute in lieu of that cash annual bonus, and subject to setting up the account, it was approved. So it was part of his executive compensation that was A, negotiated, and B, was approved in a general open meeting as part of all compensation that is required under the Brown Act for executive compensation items.
And the board at the time knew that an item would have to come back to the board to actually develop or approve the plan. There was legal issues, as Mr. Gilpin mentioned. He had his expert who does this stuff develop this plan, and it took quite some time to develop, and now it's just the final implementation step. And I know it's a little odd that it spans from one board to another board.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, and Glenn or Mr. Gilpin, I think you said it, but I thought it was strange too when we were talking about it initially, but this was in lieu of just an outright bonus, right? And if I remember correctly, just if you can refresh my memory.
Yeah, that's right. The employment agreement specifies that I'm eligible for an annual merit-based salary increase. And my recommendation to the board is I would forego that, which would keep my salary lower and lower the district's long-term PERS obligations for me. And in exchange for that, it would be this one-time contribution towards my healthcare retirement costs.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for the background. I know we have 2 new board members and plus my memory. So I appreciate you refreshing it. Any other questions, comments before we entertain a motion?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay, Director Althart.
In future compensation to the general manager, I guess each annual consideration, would it be possible for the board to give a bonus and it would go into this fund in the future?
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's the way the plan is structured. If the board so chose its subsequent evaluations, they can deposit an additional lump sum bonus on top of the original lump sum bonus for as long as I continue to work here.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Purely at the board's discretion. There's no obligation for the board to do one thing or the other in subsequent years.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
And is this only applicable to you, or is it for subsequent general managers as well?
I'll turn that over to Mr. Gilpin.
As I understand this is only applicable to the current general manager. I think there's ability to add other employees, but this is set up specifically for GM Proom.
Yep, I'm the only named person in the plan at this point in time, but I don't think that would prohibit the board from considering adding other employees in the future. And just for the 2 newer directors, just so you know, previously all district employees prior to 2014 all district employees were eligible for what's called OPEB, which is other post-employment benefits, which entitled employees to lifetime medical. Once they, even after they retired the district would continue to pay their medical costs until they passed away. And even there's some survivor benefits. So I'm not eligible for that. So this was, I wouldn't say in lieu of that, but kind of comparable to that. But from a district's perspective, this is better because the district writes a check and then they're done. If healthcare costs go out of control in the future, the district has no obligation to pick up those additional costs. This caps the district's exposure, unlike the OPEB, the old OPEB system.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second,
Again, I'm assuming that the motion, Director Eltharp, is to approve item 2.6 as presented by staff.
Yes, approve the resolution to adopt the retiree health premium reimbursement plan.
Okay, thank you. And I heard a second by Director Hernandez.
yes.
Okay, so there's a motion to adopt by Director Eltharp and a second by Director Hernandez. We'll go ahead and conduct a roll call vote. Director Eltharp,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson,
I'm going to abstain. I'm just not comfortable that I have all of the information. It feels uncomfortable to me. I'm going to abstain.
okay. Director Pinnock,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes as well. The motion passes 4 in favor, 1 abstention. Is that the correct way to do that, Mr. Gopin?
Yes.
We've had a lot of uncharted territory tonight. It's been fun. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on. That ends our action items this evening, and we'll go to reports. General Manager, please.
Yeah, so I have a few, and I don't know how the board is for time, but I want to remind the board that we are going to reconvene in the closed session too. So I'll try to keep these a little brief. So I'll just jump right in. So water supply conditions. As the board may be aware, water supply conditions throughout the state are not very encouraging. Rainfall and snowfall, including the snow water equivalent, are significantly below average. The state has set the initial state water project table A allocation at 10%, which is a low number. And I'll talk about that in a second about what that means. So the state water project conveys water from Northern California to Southern California. And each year, participating agencies like Metropolitan indicate how much water they'd like to receive from the state water project. And depending on the supplies and environmental concerns and system capabilities, the state determines how much of those supplies it can deliver, and it puts that as a percentage. So this year they said they think they can deliver 10% of the requested supplies out of the state water project. That's a pretty low allocation. It's certainly not a positive indicator. You know, maybe there'll be a late season rally. But this will cause Southern California in particular to rely more heavily on the Colorado River water supplies. And that river basin is also in a long-term drought, a decade-long drought. And due to the recently approved drought conservation plan, the states of Nevada and Arizona will be reducing their demands on the Colorado River by a combined, I think it's 200,000 acre feet. And Metropolitan Water District will be drawing 375,000 acre feet from storage that they have, above ground storage and groundwater storage, to meet the projected demands in light of water supply reductions. You know, normally we would have been talking about this earlier in the year, but I think it's just been an issue that's been kind of lost in the noise of COVID. So I think now that all agencies are getting their hands around the COVID situation better, we're starting to look at the other issues. And this could be a tough year from a water supply perspective, but I think for San Diego County, we've diversified so much, I think we'll be fine this year, but who knows about subsequent years. So the next item, just a real quick COVID update, no new cases here. We're developing plans to return our admin folks to work. The county, as you may have heard, has moved into the red tier, which is a less restrictive tier than the purple tier, which is good. And at this pace of improvements, I would expect that we'd move into an orange tier in just a few weeks. The county established guidance for office workers, which is most of our admin workers, that they should telecommute when we are in the purple or red tiers. That guidance also encourages telecommuting in the orange and yellow tiers. And the problem with the county's guidance is it doesn't have a tier beyond yellow. It doesn't have a green tier that says, all systems are go. So they don't indicate a tier that doesn't encourage telecommuting. But having said that, we're taking it to mean when we go into the orange tier, although it's encouraged, we're essential workers and we're going to start bringing our employees back. And we're targeting April 5th to bring back our next wave of admin folks. And then every 2 weeks after that, if we don't have any COVID related issues, we'll bring back another wave. And we think most of our folks will be back in the office by early May. There may be some exceptions, people with underlying health conditions, things like that, they may come in later, but that's our plan. So hopefully in a little over a month from now, we'll be fully staffed. Future Fair. So the San Marcos Promise is an organization that tries to help with education and education related things. And they're hosting a Future Fair. And it's basically a job fair for students, particularly high school age. It's traditionally a live event, but this year it'll be virtual due to COVID. And we've participated in the past. And in the past, it's been great. We've been able to drive up with a big Vector truck and our CCTV van, and you get a lot of people interested just by the size of the equipment. So I don't know how well we'll do this year, but we're hopeful. The event is next week. It's Monday through Friday, March 22nd through 26th. And it'll be open, I think, from 4 to 6 in the afternoon or in the early evening. We will have Vallecitos staff members attending the event, staffing the event every day of the week from 4 till 5. And the employees will describe what they do and give interested students kind of ideas on if you have an interest in this as a career, here's where you may want to go. So it's been a good event in the past, and hopefully it will be in the future. And I think Director Boyd Hodgson expressed some interest in participating, and thank you, Director. And any other director that's interested, just contact me and let me know. And I think that's it. In the interest of time, I'll say maybe just a happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody, and I'll yield the floor to Mr. Gilpin.
Okay, legal counsel, please.
Thank you. Just briefly, we're going to be working with Glenn and his staff on email retention policies in light of a decision involving the County of San Diego and the Golden Door, just to ensure that we're compliant with that. Given the discussion on the public comments, I guess my recommendation would be that we work with Glenn to look at adjusting the notice to the public. Now that we're allowing the public the opportunity to comment live and over Zoom, there is no requirement for us to continue receiving written or the public comment in written form. But I mean, that's policy decision by you all, but I think it would behoove us to clarify the notice to the public that's included in our notice, if that's the direction. And then just finally, one thing, I mean, if any of the board has legal questions about agenda items in advance of the meetings, I'm here, and please reach out to me ahead of the meeting if you have questions about the legality or anything on an agenda item, so that I can discuss that with you, per se offline in advance of the meetings. And I'm happy to do that. So happy St. Patrick's Day. I was referred to in a meeting today as Gelpin with a G-A-L, and I told them that was my Irish namesake version. So for St. Patrick's Day, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gilpin. San Diego County Water Authority, anything to report, Director Elthart?
No, not too much. We haven't met since our last board meeting. The Water Authority's next board meeting is next week, Thursday, the 25th. Okay. That's all.
Thank you. Encino Wastewater Authority, we'll go with capital first.
I'll defer to the general manager.
Yeah, I'll take that. So thank you, Director Hernandez. I did attend the EWA Capital Improvement Committee meeting this morning. And at the meeting, EWA staff presented updates on the capital improvement projects status report. Also, the facilities rehabilitation project's final acceptance and the climate control rehabilitation for the cogen building. And that last one was interesting. You may recall they're paying about $4 million to repair the structure of that building. This is another project that's about $4 million, and it's to ensure there's proper climate control for this building, which houses a lot of really essential equipment like the cogen engines, which take the methane gas from the wastewater treatment process and generate EWA's local power, so they don't have to rely on SDG&E. It also houses the blowers that supply air for the secondary treatment process, and it also contains numerous computer control systems. So really critical, but an $8 million investment in one building over a relatively short period of time is kind of a big hit. And all three of those items were informational only, and the last two items will be presented to the full EWA board at their next meeting, and that's all I have to report on that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Crow. The EWA Policy and Finance Committee met as well last week. The main topic that we discussed was the budget process. Just like we are, EWA's they're starting their new budget process and review, and this might come to a surprise to many of you, but almost all of the costs are going up. Electricity, labor, insurance, and why this is important is because and for the new board members, when we get to the end of this, once the Policy and Finance Committee for EWA goes through the process, then it'll go to the full board, and then typically what will happen is the general manager for EWA will come and present to us as one of the member agencies and give us the full overview of their budget, because their budget directly impacts our budget. And so there was a lot of conversation amongst my fellow committee members there about, well, how can we start implementing new strategies to reduce our electricity costs, for example. They really focused on electricity for some reason at the meeting, and we know from our own experience that electricity it goes up every year, even our home bills, right? So a conversation kind of started about around do we need to have some more solar initiatives? Do we need to have different processes as to how they operate the plant to help with those costs? And then that's just one of the many things that are going to go up. But it's interesting, and so yeah, like I mentioned before, the entire board's going to have an opportunity to hear about this. But the next step along the way is going to be some continued updates, just like we do at Vallecitos, and then eventually it'll go to the full EWA board for consideration and potentially approval. So that's the primary thing. There was a couple of other things that we minor issues, but or minor items that we discussed, but the majority of the time was focused on the budget. So with that, we'll move on to standing committees. Have any of the committees met? The Finance Committee meets on Monday. So any of the other committees meet?
Yeah.
Yep. Director Althart?
Yep. The Engineering and Equipment Committee met March 8th. The minutes are in tonight's board package. We had 4 items: the Sage Canyon tank rehabilitation update, the emergency bypass update, which Ryan Morgan went over on tonight's agenda, the fail-safe line update, specifically the Buena Reach portion of that, and finally a presentation on enhancing GIS and maintenance management programs for field staff.
Okay, thank you. Any other committees meet? If not, then we'll move right along. Director's reports on meetings, conferences, or seminars attended. Anybody attend anything? Director Hernandez?
Yes, I attended as the part of the Aqua organization. I'm part of the groundwater subcommittee, and we met on March the 4th, and talked about the ongoing SIGMA, which is the Groundwater Sustainability Program. it really doesn't affect us very much. I'm the groundwater guy here. I believe we have groundwater. We did a study. We found out that we do have groundwater. Unfortunately, it's in little teacup aquifers all around our community. And so there's not a large amount that we can draw from unless we're in real deep trouble. But so we are not going to have to comply with this Sigma program because we're not up in Central Valley where they've been overdrawing the groundwater for decades. So, but there are one of the items that came up was, and it obviously just passed, was the $1.9 trillion COVID relief, which there's COVID relief and then there's COVID relief. Part of which is 42 billion, I believe, is going to be delivered to the state of California for use by our governor. And it was asked, is that going to trickle down to districts, cities, whatever? They were not real sure exactly, but we need to look at that or listen for that because I know we are scheduled to use some of our reserves to reduce our OPED requirement. And I would hold on that until we find out if there's an opportunity to get a grant or get part of this relief money. I'd prefer that our customers got that and then they wouldn't be hit twice, once for the reserve and then once for the tax that is ever going to be placed on this COVID relief. And that was pretty much the long and the short of it.
Okay. Any other conferences? Thank you, Director Hernandez. Any other conferences attended or seminars? Director Boyd Hodgson.
Just a couple real quick. So I attended the EWA orientation, which as a new, even though I'm an alternate, I'm a board member on Encino Wastewater. And it was fantastic. It was so fascinating and interesting to hear how they are reusing so much of the water. And I learned also about their One Water initiative. And I think that that's something that we should discuss more as a board, how it can benefit ratepayers directly. And I look forward to learning more about that. As a very junior person attending that, I found it just really fascinating. And I look forward to attending that, getting a tour of that in person. Secondly, the Women in Water Symposium is going on this week. There are multiple days of seminars and breakouts. And so there's one going on tomorrow, and there was one last week as well. And it's a really great opportunity to meet other women at different stages of their career, working in water and working on boards. I've chatted with a couple of people that I think will be a good contact in the P3 committee, as we start talking about staffing plans and how to prepare a staffing plan and prepare for all the folks that are going to be retiring. So that was very, very beneficial. So that's it. That's all I did. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, a comment regarding that. I've been pushing the Director Boyd Hodgson. I've been pushing that One Water issue for since I've been on the board, and I believe it's going to be part of the budget that we're going to see come forward because we're sending 20 million gallons of water a day into the ocean, which sooner or later there's a assemblyman, I believe, that's been calling for that to be pinched off every year, and sooner or later they're going to pinch that off. So what we're going to do with 20 million gallons of water. So I'm looking forward to the budget conversation from Encino.
Cool. Anybody else? Okay, I also attended the EWA orientation as a brand new board member. I agree with Director Boyd Hodgson. It was very well done. They did a fantastic job. They mixed in videos and photos and presentation. And while it will never be as good as actually being there, I think all things considered, they did a heck of a good job with it. And I learned a lot, but as a brand new board member of EWA, I think it was just scratching the surface. It sounds like there is a tremendous amount of innovation taking place down there and very smart people doing really, neat things. And I'm looking forward to learning more. And hopefully here in the not too distant future, be able to actually do a tour in person, because it sounds like a really fascinating place, to use the word fascinating, like Director Boyd Hodgson used. I'll leave it at that. So I can't see Director Elithar for some reason, but I'm assuming you didn't have anything to report. Everybody spoke up.
No, I didn't have anything else.
All right, cool. Other business meetings. There's no meetings coming up. I don't see anything listed here on the agenda. And then future director comments or future agenda items. Oh, Director Boyd Hodgson.
I don't want to lose sight that I believe we should have a presentation or a discussion around cybersecurity. So I have asked for that before, and I'm reiterating that ask again. Hopefully we can see that on an agenda soon. Thank you.
Okay. Any other director comments or future items? And then Glenn, did you want to answer or note taken or?
Yeah, I guess, I don't know if we need to talk about it online or offline, but my understanding out of our closed sessions that we weren't going to be taking an item in front of the board in an open setting on cybersecurity. So if I misunderstood, I apologize, but I thought that was the direction of the majority of the board, just to develop the talking points and provide them to the directors, and we've done so.
Have we done so? Do we have them?
I hope you do. Yeah, I sent the talking points to all the board members a week or so ago. I'm seeing a couple nodding heads.
Okay, I will double check. Thank you.
You received a phone call.
It's Director Sinella.
I think he just received a call or something. He just went off.
Yeah, he went off.
That means Director Hernandez is in charge.
With that being the case,
Here we go.
is back.
Hello.
It was
Sorry about
almost
that,
a
guys.
hostile takeover.
So I missed what you said, but I'm sure it was really good. Sorry about that.
I appreciate your confidence.
Yeah. Okay. So no other agenda items, guys, right?
We'll be bringing back that item that
We
was
are going to bring.
talked about.
We are bringing back cybersecurity.
No,
Right.
No,
it's already been done.
but we are going to.
That was my mistake.
So
I apologize.
he emailed the talking points on that.
Right. But we are going to,
okay.
for a future item, we are bringing that item from the speaker today, I think it was Mr. Wolf. That'll be on a future agenda, just as I didn't lose track of that one.
I didn't like that answer. That's why I hung up on you. Okay. So with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn from our regular meeting, and I'll entertain a motion to go into the closed session.
Can we have a 2-minute break, 5-minute break, 3?
Yeah. Why don't we get into the closed session, and then we'll take a 3 to 5 minute break, whatever people need.
Okay.
Is there a motion?
Move to go into closed session.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Director Elithart,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Director Pinnock,
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. That concludes our regular meeting. Thank you to everybody in the public who joined, and we're going to go into closed session.